Welcome folks to the scientific story of everything. I'm here in my science lab and preparing experiments for the next batch of students to come over. And we're working on climate change and the effects on global warming, and especially to do with solutions as to how we can solve this problem. Brilliant. Let's just dive right into the story of everything. So let's start with the Big Bang. So we have 13.8 billion years of evolution of the universe as we know of it, and the planetary system in our solar system is roughly 4.6 billion years old, and life on Earth is around 3.8 billion years old. So how do we know all this? We know it from all our technology that we put out there assessing the data. How do we assess the data? We assess the data using telescopes, space observatories. We use radiometric technology. We use gamma rays, X-rays, UV, the optical spectrum of visible light. We use infrared, and we use radio technology. And all this technology is out there churning in the data and giving us the evidence that the universe is at around 13.7, 13.8 billion years old. This is a visual simulation of all the data that is crunched, and it's showing the universe, the known universe. And it's a fascinating picture, and we can see what's called a redshift. We can see much of it. Those dots are red if we churn the data together, and that shows the universe is actually expanding. It's called a redshift. These are the elements that we currently know, 118 of them. Roughly 92 of them are natural, and the remaining we have actually created them on particle accelerators, such as the Fermilab in US, and even some of them in the particle accelerator in CERN Geneva. Again, these are the applications of all these elements that we know of. That's an artistic depiction of Dmitry Mendeleev, right, sitting in the center, who actually put this period all together. That's history of life on Earth, and if you look at it, the Earth itself is 4,600 billion years old from all the data we have from geological evidence. Then you have 3.8 billion years ago we have life on Earth, and life on Earth started with simple single-cell organisms, bacterial. Then we had photosynthetic bacteria, stromatolite mounds around 2.5 billion years ago, which created the atmosphere that we currently know of, the oxygen, the ozone layer, which protects the atmosphere from solar radiation. And the plants started to ooze out oxygen 2.5 billion years ago, and we as animals, as humans, can actually depend on that oxygen and the atmosphere that was created by the plants for the last 2.5 billion years ago to be sustainable, what we call the biosphere, the living sphere as it's called. So we humans are fairly recent on the entire history of life on Earth. The subject is called paleobiology if you're interested, and it's the subject which gets the geologists and biologists together to study the Earth and life on Earth and how it evolved. So it's fascinating to see extinction episodes, as you see 5 major mass extinction episodes with this chart on the left. We're on the 6th one now, which is actually created due to human impact on the planet, and it's the largest one. We know that currently we were blessed with having the largest diversity of organisms of life on Earth, but subsequently in our current era, which is the Cenozoic era, we are the cause of massive species extinction on planet Earth. So there we are, right on the top. We've been on the face of this planet fairly new. All fossil records and DNA evidence reveals that we are roughly 250,000 years old, the first hominoids. There have been other races of human beings that have been extinct, Neanderthals to name a few, Australopithecines and Homo habilis and others, but they are all extinct. There is evidence to show that they even live parallel with Homo sapiens, but they're all extinct. We stand here now to make a difference, and that's what we're going to talk about. You can see the dinosaurs were extinct 65 million years ago, and after that suddenly none of them are around. It's called the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary, after which none of the dinosaurs throughout the planet where we see the evidence for it in fossil records, even DNA evidence suggesting that they went due to a cataclysmic event, which was a meteor impact in Yucatan Peninsula and the Gulf of Mexico, and they are all extinct after that cataclysmic impact. An impact crater is in the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico, which we have also discovered. This is the diversity of life on Earth, and you can see this is called the tree of life, and fantastic diversity, and we are actually related to everything on this planet based on cellular biology, DNA evidence that we can see. The DNA, this is the double helix molecule that my students have put together, there is, according to the Human Genome Project, there is 38,000 sequences that have been found, and much of that previously was thought to be junk DNA, but we now know it's not. It's still laying dormant, and hopefully if it expresses itself with DNA amplification, God knows where human civilization can go next in terms of its evolution. Moving on, this is the diversity of life on Earth and different kingdoms, and how they evolved and how they're related. Coming to climate change. Now we got this beautiful planet, we got fantastic diversity on this planet. The trouble with us is our impact has led to lots of problems on the planet, and how we can change that is something that is the biggest challenge of our times, and hopefully we should turn it around and do something about it rather than just simply complain about it. And as scientists, we know that there are solutions, and we're working on these solutions, and that's what I'm going to talk about as well. But first, the evidence. You can see that's a typical example of a greenhouse effect. Solar energy comes, it's trapped in the atmosphere, and some of it is reabsorbed and bounces back around the atmosphere and maintains a certain global average temperature. But if the blanket thickens, if the atmosphere thickens, that leads to a problem, and that is the problem of global temperature increase, which leads to polar ice cap melting and so on and so forth. It's caused by fossil fuel emissions. It's especially coal and oil and gas, which they are fossil fuels, and they are buried in the earth due to the Carboniferous era way long ago in the history of life on Earth. Decayed animals and decomposed animals, the remains of plants and animals which were decomposed, and that's what we call fossil fuel. And we're spewing it back into the atmosphere using fossil fuels as a source of energy. This is the evidence from NASA, and you clearly see it's never gone above 300 parts per million, that line indicating that. Now we are at 400 parts per million. And we have data going back to around 450,000 years using ice core samples. And since the dawn of the industrial era, there you go, spike going up straight. And there's a correlation between global temperature change. According to NOAA, National Climate Data Center, we can see the blue one and the red one are correlations between CO2 and temperature change. So you can see it's a hand and a glove relationship. As CO2 increases, temperature increases. And also you can see carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide greenhouse gases because of emissions from fossil fuel consumption and usage of different sources of greenhouse gases that humans, due to their industrial processes, have being churned out into the atmosphere, causing global temperature rise. That is a darn bad scenario. If you look at it, that is from NASA again. By the turn of this century, which is 2100, that's the scenario if we don't do anything about it. All the data from remote sensing technologies, including all the digitally processed computerized data, is representing that kind of a scenario, which is pretty devastating. This is how ecosystems naturally operate. Probably know it from school. However, this is what we currently have vis-a-vis graphs, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, percentage values of all of them. Industries that are causing these emissions. Then further you have countries. You have China among the highest currently, United States is second, then you got India at 6%, EU at 10%, others 30%, so on and so forth. These are the impacts of global warming. You have many direct and indirect impacts. Sea level rise is one of them, species extinction. You have massive famine, war. You have even threats of global nuclear devastation because of the stresses it imposes on the political systems on the planet and the chaos that it causes. Coral reefs dying, diatoms which spew 30% of the oxygen from the plankton, phytoplankton that are present in the oceans. All of them are under stress because of climate change. Solution: renewable energy. We have the technology. We have solar, geothermal, wind, hydroelectric, and biomass, and many countries are making this shift. Germany and Japan being one example. Germany is already at 45% renewables, and Japan is close. And even countries like Costa Rica are having higher usages of renewables as opposed to some of the countries. For example, North America, we are having at around US is at 5%, Canada is around 3%, which is something that we really need to work on. And future technologies. This is the most impressive one. This is called nuclear fusion. Fission is the trouble one, which spews out nuclear radiation. But fusion is similar to what's happening in the stars. The sun is an example. So we look at the sun with our spectroscope. We can tell that what's happening in the sun is hydrogen nuclei are fusing at a very high temperature, trillions of degrees, creating helium. In that process, they release a lot of heat. We can tell that using our spectroscopes and when we look at the stars. And we can simulate that process. And it has taken 30 years of research to develop this fusion technology in National Ignition Facility in California, US. And basically we have refined hydrogen right in the cell over there. And then we have the nuclear chamber right sitting in the center. We have amplified laser, which raises the temperature and hits the nuclear reactor right in the center, releasing immense heat. And now we know 2 years ago this process was finally consolidated, that the output is larger than the input in terms of energy, so therefore the reaction is powering itself. So this is the way to go, and hopefully we should make that shift sooner the better. Thank you for listening to this, and here's to a better sustainable planet, energy systems, and the next generation. Be well. Take care.